Disrespectful F1 moments. Welcome back, F1 fans. In the high-octane world of Formula 1, where adrenaline runs as hot as the engines, clashes between drivers are inevitable. From on-track collisions to fiery exchanges in the paddock, the sport has seen its fair share of heated moments. These athletes are always driving with the pure intention of winning the race, and when their plans get upset with some kind of external factor, they get really frustrated. Through this video, we're going to discuss about similar kinds of disrespectful F1 moments. So, we have carefully selected few famous tense situations that involved F1 drivers. But before discussing about them in detail, remember to hit the subscribe button for more interesting F1 videos. Piquet versus Salazar. This is considered the most intense brawl that happened between two F1 drivers after an on-track incident. During the 1982 German Grand Prix held at Hockenheim, Nelson Piquet was easily leading the race in his Brabham. When he tried to lap the ATS driver Eliseu Salazar, contact happened between the race leader and the tail ender, taking both the cars out of the race. Salazar wanted to slow down his ATS and let him through. Unfortunately, Salazar missed his braking point and crashed into Piquet's Brabham. Piquet came out of his cockpit and punched Eliseu Salazar, who was walking away from his car. Luckily, both were wearing helmets and their safety kits, and Piquet a little bit struck in delivering punches and kicks. Actually, both these drivers were friends before this incident, as Piquet assisted the Chilean on his way to F1. However, Salazar walked away from the furious Piquet, allowing him to calm down. After the race, it was found that Piquet wasn't able to complete the race even if this collision had not happened, as his engine was about to expire. Verstappen versus Ocon. Current world champion Max Verstappen was involved in a fight with Esteban Ocon after missing the opportunity to win the 2018 Brazilian Grand Prix. Verstappen was leading the race at that moment and tried to lap the Force India driver Esteban Ocon. Instead of allowing him to pass, Ocon decided to defend the race leader. Then Ocon made contact with Verstappen, resulting to spin both the cars. Even though both the drivers were able to rejoin the track without experiencing any major damage to their cars, that incident cost the race lead for Verstappen. Race control identified Ocon as the guilty of causing the collision and handed over a stop-go penalty for him. Hamilton, who was chasing the Dutchman, took the maximum advantage of the situation and passed him to the race lead. Even though Verstappen was unlucky to miss the race victory, he demonstrated a great recovery drive and completed the race as second. After finishing the race, Verstappen directly went to Ocon and pushed him forcibly several times in the chest. This was totally against the FIA regulations, and stewards ordered him to serve 2 days of public service as the punishment. Schumacher versus Coulthard. During the 1998 Belgium Grand Prix, Formula 1 fans experienced one of the most furious fights between two drivers when Michael Schumacher broke into Coulthard's garage after a collision between the two drivers that ended the race. The event was held under a bad weather condition, and 14 drivers had to retire due to the collisions that happened on the slippery track layout. One such crash involved Schumacher and Coulthard, which led to the fight between them. Just before the collision, Schumacher was leading the race and Coulthard was in 8th position as the tail ender. Schumacher tried to lap the British racing driver, and he intentionally slowed down his car to let race leader to pass him. However, Schumacher didn't have a clear picture about the danger in front due to poor visibility caused by the adverse weather, so the race leader crashed into the slow-moving McLaren, damaging his right front tire, including the entire suspension. That incident damaged both the cars and they went to their respective pits. However, Schumacher came back to the McLaren garage, challenging Coulthard for a fight. A lot of Ferrari mechanics tried to stop him before reaching the McLaren garage, but it was not successful, and both the drivers were involved in a heated argument regarding the collision. Then members of the two teams tried to break up the fight. As there were only 8 cars on the track before this incident, Coulthard knew it was possible to collect some points to improve his position in the championship standings. So McLaren's pit crew quickly repaired his car, and Coulthard rejoined the race to complete it as 7th, earning some valuable points. Schumacher versus Hill. Actually, this driver pair contributed to make one of the most intense rivalries in the sport during the 1990s. After losing the 1994 title fight to Schumacher, Damon Hill was in a furious mode throughout the 1995 F1 season. At that moment, Hill was driving for Williams and Schumacher for Benetton. Both the drivers were in equally competitive cars for the second time in their careers, and this driver pair collided thrice throughout the 1995 season. The first one happened at Hill's home race at Silverstone, and then the pair came to collide again at the 1995 Italian GP at Monza. This time, Hill crashed into Schumacher's car, taking both the cars out of of the race. Just after stopping the spinning of the cars, Schumacher came out of his Benetton and ran towards Williams to express his displeasure regarding the incident. Hill was still in the car and Schumacher expressed some furious words after grabbing his steering wheel as well. Alonso versus Massa. Fernando Alonso and Felipe Massa were involved in a heated argument when they were heading to the podium ceremony of the 2007 European Grand Prix, which was held at Nürburgring. At that moment, Alonso was driving for McLaren and Massa for Ferrari. The duo was involved in wheel-to-wheel battle several times and came too close a couple of times. Finally, they rubbed their wheels and side pods at the latter stage of the race. However, this contact opened the opportunity for the McLaren driver to take the race lead, paving his way for the 18th Grand Prix victory. Even though Alonso clinched the victory there, he was unhappy about the incident that happened with Massa and expressed his displeasure while walking to the podium ceremony. The Spaniard accused that the Ferrari driver was deliberately causing the accident and Massa denied it, defining it as a normal race incident. This verbal spread continued for several minutes. Fisichella versus Villeneuve. This incident happened between Renault driver Giancarlo Fisichella and BMW driver Jacques Villeneuve after the second part of the qualifying of the 2006 European Grand Prix. It was Fisichella's final flying lap, which gave him the opportunity to survive at the end of the Q1. However, the Renault driver was obstructed by the slow-moving BMW of Jacques Villeneuve inside the track. After parking his Renault inside the garage, Fisichella ran towards the BMW garage in furious mode as he was unhappy about missing the opportunity to set a good lap in his final attempt. Villeneuve was still in his BMW and one of his mechanics tried to stop the Renault driver. Then he stood up front of the Villeneuve's car and started blaming him, accusing the BMW driver of obstructing him deliberately. But Villeneuve opposed this accusation as he was not aware about this fast-moving car running behind him. Bottas versus Russell. A tense situation arose between George Russell and Valtteri Bottas after a high-speed collision between these two drivers at the 2021 Emilia-Romagna Grand Prix. At that moment, Russell and Bottas were driving for Williams and Mercedes teams respectively. Even though Williams' car was not strong enough to challenge Mercedes, George Russell tried to make the maximum use of the new slick tires that were pitted 2 laps before to complete an overtake against Bottas. But the right side of the Russell's car went off the track into the grass field, which was wet and slippery, losing the traction. After losing the control of the car, he crashed into Valtteri Bottas at a high speed, taking both the cars out of the race. However, Russell had no idea about the incident and thought that it was due to Bottas' fault. He came out of his pit and directly went to Valtteri's car. Russell leaned over the cockpit of Bottas' car and started blaming for causing the collision. It was later reported that he was asking whether he was trying to kill them both, but video footage clearly showed that the accident was mainly due to Russell's fault. Verstappen versus Russell. Verstappen and Russell were involved in a hot word exchange at the end of the 2023 Azerbaijan sprint race as they made a collision in that race. At the commencement of the sprint, Mercedes driver George Russell got a good start to the race and he went wheel-to-wheel till they reached turn 3 of the Baku circuit, fighting for the P3. Russell didn't keep enough space for the Red Bull driver and both collided, causing significant damage to the side pod of Verstappen's car. After the race, these two rival drivers met in park form post-race. Verstappen accused that Russell deliberately didn't keep space for his challenger, and this led to a heated argument between these two drivers. Trulli versus Sutil. Even though any of these two drivers are not famous people in the sport, their fight is still in the memories of the people due to the intense nature of the argument. This incident happened between Toyota driver Jarno Trulli and Force India driver Adrian Sutil during the 2009 Brazilian GP. When Trulli tried to overtake the Force India driver, one of his tires went off the track into the grass area. This incident resulted in him spinning into the back of Sutil's car. Both the driver had to retire early from the race, and Trulli was frustrated about the incident that happened on the track. Even though Trulli is the one who tried to complete the overtake, he accused Sutil for causing the accident. So this resulted to start a heated-up conversation between two drivers, and the race stewards carried out a full investigation about the incident, and Trulli was identified as guilty of the entire scenario. The Italian driver was handed over a fine of $6,000, describing the reason as aggressively confronting Sutil. Then the pair erupted again during the driver's press conference ahead of the 2009 Abu Dhabi Grand Prix. Mansell versus mechanic. In all the above instances, we talked about heated moments between drivers. However, in some rare instances, drivers got heated with their mechanics as well. It is usual to hear such conversations over the radio, but now we're going to discuss a moment that a heated conversation started between Nigel Mansell and one of his Williams mechanics. This happened during the 1991 Imola GP when his Williams gearbox failed to shift into second and experienced a spin on the slippery track surface. He directly came back to a Williams mechanic and started to express his displeasure on the Williams challenger, as he was not able to score any points at the end of the Grand Prix. All the above discussed moments are fueled by intense competition, personal rivalries, or simply the hit of the moment. These instances showcase the passion and intensity that define Formula One. As the dust settles and tempers cool, one thing remains certain: in the world's fastest sport, emotions run just as fast.